Chapter 29, Thursday, Day 11, 8:15 a.m., the meeting. What the hell is going on, Paul? I finished mopping up the hollandaise sauce with my toast. The menu at the hospital beat most of the hotels I had stayed at during my business life. I chewed slowly, savoring my last bite and the expression on Larry's face. I take it you got a call? I asked, wishing I'd ordered a side of pancakes like the morning before. Larry took another step into the room and shook a finger at me. As I poured another cup of dark roast coffee, I said, "Why would they serve eggs Benedict with whole wheat toast? What's the point? Now, their pancakes are something else. Light, fluffy, and without a single grain. And I want to know where the fuck they get that thick sliced bacon. Rumor has it that tomorrow is steak and eggs day. Hope they aren't planning to boot my ass out of here before breakfast. Look, don't give me your shit. Riley is still on the phone with that asshole prosecutor Willis. Seems we have a meeting this afternoon. Oh, and not just with Willis, but his fucking boss, Gibaldi. He wants to know if we set up security, which we hadn't since we didn't know a fucking thing about it. Care to explain?" I got the text from my lawyer just as breakfast arrived. I wasn't about to let it get cold. Now that I'm going to live, I think I might just have to break a leg now and then. "Anytime, brother, just give me a call." Come on, man, quit fucking around." Was Riley surprised? Yeah, she was, and she is pissed off. Right now, she's on the phone with her boss explaining why Gibaldi is coming here, which is a little hard because she has no fucking idea. I promised Riley I was through causing her problems, and I damn well meant it. My lawyer did tell Willis that you'll be in the meeting because I trust you guys and think you deserve to hear the truth. Willis agreed and made it crystal clear that you will not be there because I want you there. "So why will we be there?" Larry asked. "To handcuff me if it doesn't go the way he wants," I said. Be a pleasure. Can you at least tell us why now?" Larry asked as Riley strode through the door and stood beside him, hands on hips. "Sure. Larry, you've been a better friend than I deserve. Riley, you saved my life. I'm done with you guys putting your lives at risk. And just so you know, I'm done chasing Nikki. As far as the rest, all I can say is that you deserve to hear the truth in a way that leaves you clear of any of my shit." There was a little more back and forth before they stalked away to find a conference room and a large monitor. On her way out the door, Riley asked how I was going to put on a presentation with my hands cuffed behind my back. An hour later, she returned and tossed a box onto my bad leg. "I'm going to stand outside in case this is a bomb," she said. "Yeah, then why's the tape cut?" I asked. She shut the door behind her to limit the collateral damage. After lunch, she and Larry waited outside the conference room, not so quietly discussing me, while my lawyer and I reviewed the paperwork. Having been paid a lot of money, Mr. God, How I Miss the Mob had gone the extra mile. Everything I had asked for was there, along with some things I'd never considered. He insisted on prepping me for the meeting, and was clearly worried I did not take Peter Gibaldi seriously enough. According to him, Peter Gibaldi had more dirt on people than J. Edgar Hoover, and dispensed favors with strings attached like Don Corleone. The rumor was that he had granted more than a few favors to a golfing buddy who ended up running his crew from the Oval Office. According to my lawyer, my proposition to Gibaldi could go one of three ways. I would get what I was after, end up in prison, or end up disappearing. Later, I would remember chuckling at the last point. My lawyer assured me that if Gibaldi showed up, he would be late. Prosecutors are like doctors. They need you to understand the pecking order. So, at meeting time, I was heads down going over my data when the conference room door opened, and Kurgan Willis walked in. I'd only met him once, just before Larry took me on our road trip. He hadn't changed. He was still youngish and skinny, rather than slender, and still looked like a racetrack greyhound on crack. "Damn, I've still got it," I heard my lawyer say under his breath when Gibaldi strode in behind Willis. The photo ops didn't do the man justice. He was an example of genetic engineering gone astray. Like many over-the-hill warriors, he resembled a penguin in his crisp, well-tailored black suit and white shirt, until you looked at his face. He had a high forehead, accentuated by a receding hairline, deep-set predatory eyes, and chubby, heavily whiskered cheeks. He wasn't a penguin. He was a huge carnivorous chipmunk. He motioned us to keep our seats and sat down across from us. Willis trailed behind him, looking like a bellboy carrying the luggage. albeit a bellboy in a tailored monogrammed dress shirt with jade cufflinks. He hefted a leather briefcase up onto the table, ignored us, flexed his bony fingers to get the blood flowing, and fingered through files. Riley and Larry eased into the room, quietly shut the door, and took seats against the wall behind me. Riley gave Larry a nasty look when he broke the chill by tapping me on the shoulder and winking. The carnivorous chipmunk shook his head at Larry and then studied me for a long time before speaking. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Peter Gibaldi. I am the U.S. Attorney for the New York Eastern District. I believe you both have met Mr. Willis. Forgive me for not shaking hands in this highly unusual situation," he said in a professional politician's deep, well-modulated voice. It was a good voice. The rapacious rodent knew it and liked to listen to it. Over the next 15 minutes, his soliloquy included 2 lessons he learned as a boy, his personal code regarding the application of justice, and a long discussion with my lawyer regarding Denver's restaurants. He stopped in mid-sentence, abruptly turned his head, and snapped, "Mr. Harding, I have traveled halfway across the country to hear your proposition. Are you ready to tell me why I am here?" I looked up from my keyboard, where I had been squinting to see behind the rapidly disintegrating screen cracks. The cracks floated like a web in the air between us, then dissolved, leaving only a spider eyeing me. Why was he here? I leaned back in my chair, as though needing time to consider. The corners of his mouth twitched. He liked that. I liked that he liked it. Game on, asshole. "Okay, Mr. Harding, let's begin with an extraordinary request, and I emphasize request, that we tell you what evidence we have connecting you with Frank Dragna. Mr. Willis is understandably incensed by this, suggestion. Do you seriously believe we would do such a thing?" he asked. Mr. Willis leaned forward, his jaw twitching. He probably practiced not blinking in front of a mirror. "Because I said that I stipulate," pausing. I glanced at my lawyer. He nodded that I got it right, so I continued. "To having committed any crimes with Frank Dragna, supported by reasonable evidence. Basically, I'll plead guilty," I said, winging the last part. My lawyer winced, and Gibaldi snarled. "And who determines reasonable?" I suppressed a grin and said, "Me, or a judge, or an arbitrator." "You want us to tell you what evidence we have against Dragna, and what do we get in return? You instead of him? He must be offering you a lot of money. What is this bullshit?" Willis yipped. His boss, Gibaldi, gave it a 3 count when I didn't answer, before tapping Willis on his shoulder. "Kurgan, enough. We talked about this. I don't believe this man is willing to go to prison either for Dragna or to feed him information. There is another reason. Mr. Harding, you said Craig Nicky shot you," he said in a matter-of-fact voice. I shook my head. "No, I said I recognized a man in a picture as the man who shot my wife and me. I never said I saw Nicky." This time the smile puffed out his cheeks. His face was stranger than I thought. Combined with that Upper East class modulated voice, his upper face and deep-set eyes were almost hypnotic. Yet somehow they drifted in and out of sync with his lower chipmunk face. His eyes laughed as his mouth frowned, and the mouth smiled as the eyes measured the distance to pounce. He was like a boxer, moving both gloves before suddenly delivering a combination of right cross and uppercut. I realized that his little one-man warm-up act wasn't to introduce him to us, but for him to read the room, in much the same way a professional gambler reads the table at the beginning of a game. Mr. Gibaldi was a dangerous man. "Excellent point, sir, which begs the question, can you still identify Nicky?" he asked, in a tone implying I just confessed. I also have a face that sends different signals. I smiled a sneer and said, "I can identify Nicky. I can tell you how often he trims that stupid ponytail and what his 3 favorite baseball caps are. I can tell you that he doesn't wear them because of a bald spot. And from pictures in your files, I know he doesn't wear one to bed. And he also likes full-bodied women." Realizing my voice was rising, I looked down at the table. 5 people were in that little room, and all I could hear was my breathing. I was blowing my only real chance to find out what the hell I had done that left Gabriella dead and my life in shreds. Gathering myself, I looked up into the eyes of the man who, if he knew something, had the power to tell me. Why is this difficult? I was shot in the head. I've holes in my memory. Help me fill them in, and I'll tell you what you flew across the country to find out. And let's cut the crap. If you didn't care what I have to say, you wouldn't have let Squeaky here handle it. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? Willis chirped. To balance his side of the table, Gibaldi gave a manly snort and slapped Willis on the shoulder so hard, the skinny bastard had to put both hands on the table. It's okay, Kurgan. We need to move along. Mr. Harding, other than the fact that we think Craig Nicky shot you and killed your wife, we haven't a single damn thing. Nothing. Not one damn thing. Damn it. Enough, Kurgan. Give him the fucking documents. One of the marshals can witness. We officially acknowledge that we have no evidence of any ties between you and Frank Dragna. We are here for you to tell us what we missed. Let's move on. A warning glance at his mutinous subordinate left no doubt there would be a discussion in the future. Kurgan ignored it and showed there was more to him than met the eye by tossing the 2 pieces of paper in front of me. As my lawyer, Henry, snatched them up and began reading, Kurgan made a last appeal. Boss, that's fine, but we're talking full immunity for all crimes, including state crimes. At least make him go on record about Kaufman. His boss cut off my reply with a hard slap on the table. Kurgan, enough! Mr. Harding did not kill that bastard, regardless of what that detective, what's his name? Oh yeah, Dayana says. Did you, Mr. Harding? No. See, Kurgan, the man says he didn't do it, and we have no evidence. That son of a bitch Kaufman deserved to be drawn and quartered. Starting from his balls, not put in Witsec. I wanted to puke when it happened. Let me remind you, it didn't fucking happen on my watch. He pivoted to me with a tiger's ferocity, leaned against the table and thrust a finger at me. I pulled my head back as if he pressed the tip of a sword at my throat. As for you, start talking. I will, as soon as you get your fucking finger out of my face and sign my immunity. It wasn't me being macho. I didn't give a shit. The bullying chipmunk didn't have the answers I so badly needed. It was over. The only reason for the immunity was to take one last shot at the man who ruined my life. Gibaldi leaned back as my lawyer handed the papers to me with a nod. After I signed, he took them and slid them respectfully to Gibaldi's squire. Without a glance at them, Kurgan slid them to his boss. Gibaldi's actual lawyering days had passed because he signed all copies without rereading them. He motioned to Larry, who looked at Riley. Riley, looking amused, nodded her approval. My lawyer showed Larry where to initial, sign, and date, and leaned back in his chair. That left Larry in a ticklish position. What to do with them when he was finished? Being Larry, he chose to leave them on the table, sat down, and pulled his magic act by making a magazine appear. I was surprised when Riley glanced fondly at him and grinned at me. Later, I would discover while Gibaldi might have been a big dog in the DOJ, he was not well liked by the rest of the pack, especially Riley's boss. I returned her smile, ignored the frowns on the other side of the table, and pulled up a spreadsheet on the large monitor at the end of the table. I began talking before Gibaldi could give me permission. You think Frank Dragna is some sort of money launderer, maybe a mob accountant, or even a neutral go-between. Why? Because you have pictures of a venture capitalist clubbing with drug lords, deep-sea fishing with syndicate kings of every nationality. Oh, here's him shaking hands with the president, and here's one of him with an actual king. And this guy goes everywhere in the country to visit every level of slimeball. I always wanted to say that, and kept flipping through pictures of a guy who once would have been called dapper. Regardless of who surrounded him, he always seemed to be the center of attention. His deeply tanned face beamed with confidence and camaraderie. His jet-black hair was now streaked with gray. Yet, like America's oldest professional quarterback, his face and 6-foot frame looked the same. I looked across the table and said, "A few years ago, you decided he wasn't important, just some wannabe gangster who used his venture capital company to launder money. You decided he couldn't be doing any real business or you'd have caught him. Basically, you covered up not being able to catch him by making him unimportant." Gibaldi leaned across the table, but it was Kurgan who spoke. "Who do you think you are? Trust me, I'll find out where you got those photos. A geek like you has no idea what goes into our decision-making. We're not here for you to lecture us," Kurgan said in a thin voice, dripping with contempt. I smiled at him and said, Noted. But all I was doing was paraphrasing emails from you to Mr. Gibaldi. Okay, you didn't use the word cover-up. Let's see. Yes, here it is. I suggest we proactively conclude that Frank Dragna is a low player not worth the resources pursuing. If you want, I can show you more Frank emails between you and your peers that use words like embarrassing. The guy is an evil genius and shit like that. Gibaldi's voice sliced through Kurgan's squawk. Be assured, Mr. Harding, your agreement requires that you tell us about your relationship with Dragna and provide evidence of criminal activity. What you are showing us will get you at least 20 years if this meeting doesn't get better. Fast. Noted, I said, determined not to let him get in the last word. I faced the monitor and continued. You can't catch him because he is not using his venture capital business to launder money. Obviously, he doesn't use it as a cover. He uses his so-called ties to criminals to cover his venture capital activity. Wait for it, Kurgan. I thought you knew about that. It's Mr. Willis. Whatever, Kurgan. I have the emails. Yeah, you covered your ass. You dug very, very deep into this guy's business. Trust me, Dragna not only knew what you were doing, he was counting on it. You were in his honey trap, spending God knows how much money looking at every fucking angle. Extortion, laundering, fraud, tax evasion. And all of it was spotless, down to every detail. Hell, if anything, he cleaned up the businesses he put money into. Gibaldi interrupted, as though bored. Mr. Harding, Dragna is hardly a major venture capital player. He generally stays below expansion and never goes into the bridge stage. For your information, it is why we see him primarily as a potential informant, which sooner or later he will be. It was my turn to be astonished. Then it hit me. Sure, I get it. It's only millions, and you're a billions kind of guy. When his eyes narrowed, I turned back to my presentation. Here is the problem. By your standards, it's small potatoes. However, it is bushels of them. Second, as you have well documented, Dragna's success rate is more than phenomenal. It's improbable, verging on impossible. He is a genius, not a prophet who sees into the future, as you referred to him in more than one email, Kurgan. Mr. Harding, you are on damn thin ice, and it's small potatoes, not tomatoes, Gibaldi said. I met his eyes and said, You say potato, I say tomato. Try to think out of the box for once. Our deal is I talk, and you ask questions, not spout off threats. You want to arrest me? Go ahead. And I don't cancel the code that sends everything I have to Dragna, the press. Hell, everyone in the fucking world. I'm going to jail for 20 years. Shit, tack on another 10. We both know that what I have is more than embarrassing. Why don't you let me finish? When he didn't tell the marshals to cuff me, I pulled up a network visualization. Dragna keeps it small for a lot of reasons other than making too much data for you guys to figure out. He only invests in companies with at least one competitor for the next venture capital stage. You looked at the companies he picks. You didn't bother looking at the ones he didn't. If you had combined that with everything you have on Nikki, you would have seen that he seems to spend a lot of time where the losers live. You watched him visit all sorts of bad or at least undesirable guys. Then you lost interest. Oh, shit, I heard Kurgan murmur. Yeah, oh shit. It seems like the losers are a combination of unlucky, accident-prone, and careless. Sometimes it's just a little fire at the wrong time, or maybe they get busted for dope, have car accidents, or get mugged. In more than a few cases, they find themselves hospitalized. Sometimes they die. A couple of key people in the losing companies drowned in rafting accidents. A woman fell off a cliff hiking. Another got lost in the desert. And more than a few overdosed. You dug deeply? Give me a fucking break. Sure, add more years to my sentence, because all of this information you have had for a long time. I watched as, across the table, it slowly sank in. Just to make sure, I summed it up for them. Dragna could have flown under the radar, but instead he set up a honey trap. He knew that sooner or later somebody might tumble to how he picks out winners so well. Someone might notice that he doesn't pick out winners at all. He simply picks who the hell will lose and sits back. I paused again and continued, not to make sure they got the point. It was clear from the looks I was getting across the table that they got the message. They weren't stupid, and possibly not even crooked, but they were absolutely arrogant assholes. But Dragna knows what will happen if you guys have him on your radar. If any of the local yokels, as you call them in your emails, Kurgan, start wondering what happened to all the serious competition in some of the bigger venture capital shit. Are you going to spend your time looking into accidents or bad luck? Hell no. You're the guys who focus on the big picture. Billions in drugs, guns, and money. And if anyone else tries to look at anything else, you'll tell them they are interfering with a federal investigation. Of course, you will never say it is a federal investigation going nowhere. And why is it going nowhere? Kurgan and Gibaldi leaned back in their chairs, their eyes wider than the news allowed. I realized my voice had risen, and I was leaning across the table. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Larry whispered, "Back off, brother. Don't give them the excuse." I straightened, took a few deep breaths, considered apologizing, and thought, fuck it and fuck them. I considered taking a drink of water and decided against it. I knew my hand would shake. Lowering my voice, I said, "You didn't find anything because Dragna made damn sure there was nothing to find. It was all smoke and mirrors. It was the best fucking honey trap I've ever seen. You've been nothing but his shield all of these years. And you figured all this out on your own." "Right," Kurgan said with a dismissive giggle. I expected his boss to start a tale of some kind to distract us as he figured things out. But he just sat quietly, his eyes boring into me, as though waiting for something else, something he didn't know. I shrugged it off. I was being paranoid. The chipmunk was gaming me. I looked at Kurgan and replied, "No, I put a team on it." Kurgan, his eyebrows raised, asked, "You have a team?" "Of intelligent bots," I said. I heard the magazine rustle and Larry interjected, "That's artificially intelligent virtual robots." Kurgan's eyes looked past me at Larry and said, carefully spacing out each word, "I know what they are, Marshal Burns. If I want your opinion, I'll ask." Having established the pecking order, he looked back at me. "You taught bots how to analyze big data?" he asked, his mouth twisting into a sneer almost as good as mine. "You don't teach them, you train them," the voice behind me corrected. "And this doesn't come close to big data," I added. "Are you finished yet, Mr. Harding?" Gibaldi calmly interjected. I looked into his eyes and felt he had just asked me if I had finished my last cigarette. His mouth and eyes agreed on smug. Kurgan, on the other hand, looked like he was about to faint. It's guys like him who always take the fall. Somehow, I felt I was missing something, though. I looked around the room. Henry looked as confused as I was. I almost turned to look at Larry and Riley, but caught myself. I was sure they were going to regret attending this meeting. It was time to play my trump card. No, thanks for asking. As to your earlier observation, all of this makes Dragna rich. Filthy rich. This pays his expenses for what he doesn't want you to know, because if you tumbled onto it, that would be the least of his worries. With Nikki doing the wet work, I think it is safe to say that not only is it unlikely that you could ever prove anything, but it is damn sure you will never tie any of it to Dragna. And the worst part is that we all know you wouldn't even try. And you know what? It doesn't matter. Dragna upped his game right under your nose. I pulled up a document. Everyone leaned forward to look at the screen. Everyone except Gibaldi. "And what are we looking at, Mr. Harding?" Gibaldi asked. He wasn't looking at anything because he was looking at me. I bit off pointing it out because I realized he wasn't posturing. And suddenly, he was no longer a carnivorous chipmunk. He was the most dangerous animal on Earth, a powerful man. And I had a feeling that what was on the screen was why he had come to Denver. Kurgan, the faithful assistant about to be sacrificed, was closer to the screen and began reading. Phase 1, Alpha 1, antitrypsin trial. It looks like a depression treatment. Kurgan stared wide-eyed across the table at me. Without the arrogance, he looked like a nice guy. "You're kidding. You think Dragna does the same thing to drug trials? He messes with drug trials? Oh, shit. He makes losers?" Gibaldi leaned across the table and said softly, "You didn't get this from us. Is this what you did for Dragna? You hacked into pharmaceutical companies?" Fuck if I knew. That was the entire point of this meeting. Gibaldi was supposed to tell me what I had been doing with Dragna. I felt the chill run down my back, and it all felt too easy. Supposedly, he'd given me blanket immunity to learn what I knew. Had the real purpose been to provide cover for what he knew? If so, from the look on Kurgan's face, he wasn't in on the secret.